I'm going to teach about this thing that I just fall in love with teaching called Great Mistakes next time. It's the thing that has been the hardest of everything I've learned as a parent, for me personally to learn to embrace, and that is the idea that it's important to let my kids struggle and screw up from time to time so that they can benefit from the learning opportunities that come with that. Be that as it may, I'm going to finish the day with one more story. I've told a couple of Molly stories today, so I'm going to tell one more. Somebody once told me that to him this story explained why I do this work. I thought that was an interesting observation. We have 4 kids. They all present their interesting challenges, don't they? Every single one of them is strong in their own way. 2 of our kids are especially strong-willed, a little impulsive, a little creative, a little bit kind of pushing the limits out there. Can you see why I kind of like that? Because I've lived with some of those kids. And the 2 kids that are really pushing the limits on a typical day are Matt and Molly. Strong-willed inside from the very get-go. That's the way they were born into this world. And on the day Molly was born, we went to the University of Michigan Hospital. We'd been there a couple of times. We were using the nurse midwife program for birthing, and it was lovely, and the preparation was nice, and you go in, you have this nice, sweet, low-light room, and it's very pleasant, and things are going along fine. Now, in the birth process, Rebecca came along fairly normally, kind of a long labor, but fairly normal. Matt came in a great big old hurry. Alicia came, she was like the perfect birth. It took just the right amount of time, wasn't terribly painful. Everybody was feeling happy and calm. It was kind of like the perfect little moment. And then we assumed that Molly might be about the same. We're pretty good at this by now. We know how to do the basics. And so we were in this beautiful little midwife suite, and things were coming along, and Molly's head started to come out. And then somehow this strong-willed little girl, while her head was in the birth canal, reached across with one arm, grabbed the other shoulder like this, and held on and wouldn't let go. And that little head emerged from the birth canal, and the shoulders, because of the way she was holding them, would not follow. And I saw that little head sticking out into the universe, turning blue in front of me. Now, I know a lot about brains and child growth and development. And I know that kids can go for about 1.5 minutes without too much brain damage, without having access to good oxygen. But it was getting awfully close. Well, when this little head got stuck, the nurse midwife pushed this little button, and in ran the University of Michigan SWAT team. The SWAT team, these doctors and nurses that come racing in, they push me aside, they go up to my wife, they're trying to take this head and twist it and turn it and carry on, and they're yelling at each other and they're yelling at my wife, and I am feeling completely and absolutely helpless in this situation. I want to save my child, and I see that she's turning blue, and I don't like it at all. Finally, this one doctor takes her little head and twists it kind of hard, and boom, goes like that, and she's moving now, and they pull her out, and they clean her off, and they wrap her up, and they hand her over to me, not to my wife, because they knew that I was really distressed. They were trying to calm me down. But I had noticed something in the wrapping, that her whole left arm and hand were flaccid. There was no muscle tone. Something wasn't working right. I said, what about that arm? I saw you wrap it up like that. Oh, it's okay. We probably damaged a nerve getting her out of there. We had to get her out of there. Probably damaged a nerve. And there's somebody who's a really good expert on that here in the hospital. We can probably get you an appointment with him in a couple of weeks. How many of you think that was good enough for me? That doctor was in our room within about an hour. And he looked at her and he said, you know, we just think there's a little bit of compression, a little damage, but it'll probably be just fine. There's another doctor who's more of an expert on this than me, and she works in the area here in Southeast Michigan. We can probably get you an appointment with her. She's hard to get into in a few months. I happen to know that doctor, and she was there the next morning. And she showed me what to do, to take Molly home and work on that arm. I had to move it and massage it and try to make sure that we were maintaining range of motion and good blood circulation to all of the muscles in that arm and shoulder. And so for the next 2 months, it was my job every single day, several times a day, to do all of that with her. And finally, one day, after about 2 months of doing that every single day with Molly, finally one day, I saw those fingers move just a little bit. And I knew those nerves were alive. And it got stronger and stronger and stronger. After a little while, kind of forgot about her arm. It was fun every once in a while to see her when she would hide in the shadows on our staircase. And she would wait until her brother Matt came walking by. And she would hide back in the shadows and wait and then leap across and just grab him by the neck and hold on to him and squeal. And every time she did something like that, I looked at her and I said, look at that arm. It's strong. It's good. And then one day I had an opportunity to go to Hawaii. I had some work to do in Hawaii, and my wife informed me that that was really great that I was going to Hawaii because the whole family was coming with me. And not only were they coming with me, but we were staying for 2 whole weeks so that we could explore and have a family vacation. So I didn't really save a lot of money on that trip. I earned a little bit, but I'm pretty sure I spent more than I earned. And one day we were wandering around up on the northeast coast of the big island, and there were these beautiful valleys and these big, steep jungle kind of cliffs. And off in the distance, there were rainbows across the way. There were little rivers and streams that were coming off the mountains. And it was just one of those gorgeous, beautiful places, just so lovely. And we were hiking along, and at a certain point, we saw a rainbow across the way, and we all stopped just to admire it and talk a little bit. But Molly, being the strong-willed little thing that she is, being the kid who even from age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, liked to be the leader, wanted to be at the head of the line, wanted to be making decisions, wanted to be figuring out how to do things her way, she got a little bit bored with us just standing around there and decided to proceed down this little jungle trail along the cliff on her own. It was muddy here and there, as it is in a jungle. And she reached a certain point on the trail, 25, 30 yards from us, around a little bend where we couldn't see her. And because of the noise of the waterfall across the way, we couldn't hear her as she slipped and fell off the trail and started down this cliff. Now, this cliff was at least 1,000 feet. It was steep like this. My son and I had talked about how difficult it would be to try to climb it, maybe even impossible unless you had ropes and stuff to do so. Molly started to slip and fall down this cliff. And then, with her strong little left hand and right hand, grabbed a hold of a root in a couple of bushes along her fall and held on about 5, 6, 7 feet below the edge of the cliff. She told us later she screamed and hollered for help. Nobody heard her because of the waterfall across the way. She screamed and hollered for a couple of minutes. And finally, she said she figured out she was just going to have to do this on her own. And so she struggled and clawed her way up root to root to root to root, got up to the top, flipped herself open, all muddy, tried to clean herself off a little bit. She walked back down the trail where we were still standing there admiring that waterfall. She didn't come to me. She didn't come to her mom. She came to her brother. She told him what happened. He said, don't tell mom and dad. Don't tell mom and dad until we get back to the parking lot. They're going to be really upset if they know this. Let's give them a little time. We'll tell them after. Don't you hate it when your kids are smart like that? And so I wondered why she was not leading the pack anymore. I wondered why she wasn't always trying to get out there ahead. I wondered why she was holding on to her brother's hand the whole time, until finally we got back to the parking lot and she told us what had happened. And you all know what your heart does as a parent when you hear these stories, but at least it wasn't happening in that moment. Strong-willed kids are my special love. But the same thing that's true for raising strong-willed kids is true for raising all kids. It's just some of them are a little bit more challenging. The same basic rules, the family routines that are just so good. That basic expectation for respectful speech. Strong-willed kids will challenge you sometimes. That basic expectation that you can tell a kid to go sit down and be quiet for a couple of minutes. Molly challenged us more than any other kid in our family on that particular point. The basic family rules about food, the basic family rules about chores, the basic capacity in your home to be able to create a place where kids feel loved and connected to you every single day. It's all the same stuff. It's just some kids make it a little bit more challenging. How many of you are lucky enough to have one of those challenging kids? In a certain way, it's a privilege, isn't it? Isn't it a privilege that for some reason the universe has given you the responsibility of raising one of these strong-willed kids that only a really good parent can help this child turn to become everything that he or she is capable of becoming?